You're listening to the Broken Havoc podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. What's up, everybody? It is Broken Havoc here, right here on the Broken Havoc podcast, here with the debut episode of Old School Showcase, where I discuss retro pay-per-view and retro wrestling shows. That could be whether pay-per-view, TV, whatever. We're discussing retro shows right here on Old School Showcase. And on our very first episode of Old School Showcase, I'm going to be discussing one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time, ECW One Night Stand 2006, coming to us from the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. This happened June 11th, 2006, and arguably this show was just flat out one of the best, man. This kickstarted the relaunch of ECW, the failed relaunch of the WWE. And by the way, speaking of ECW, the first 3 episodes of Old School Showcase are going to be based off of ECW, because we're going to be talking about the relaunch of ECW. Of course, starting off with One Night Stand 2006. Next week, we're going to be talking about the debut of ECW on Sci-Fi. And then in the third episode, I should say, we're going to be talking about Vengeance 2006, because that involved the match between Edge and RVD, which was a really good match. After that, we're going to be going flat out with other pay-per-views. I will be discussing other ECW on Sci-Fi episodes, because quite frankly, that show, a lot of people hate that show, and I can't disagree with them, because the show is bad and it's not even ECW authentic. But I will say, the first few episodes were kind of memorable, and especially the first one, and I will talk about that on Old School Showcase. But we're going to be talking about ECW One Night Stand 2006. Overall, again, this was one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I was only 3 when this pay-per-view happened. I was actually introduced to ECW with the relaunch. I said it straight up. Granted, I'm 19 years old right now. I was introduced to ECW with the relaunch, and, I'm not ashamed to say that. I was introduced to ECW with the relaunch when I was playing SmackDown vs. RAW 2010, and they were talking about ECW and all that stuff. I didn't know ECW was an actual company until like a year later, that it was actually an old company, and then I did some research when I was like around probably, I should say maybe, 2011, I was 8. So maybe like around 10 years old, I started doing a little more research on ECW, and, my first true introduction to like the actual like ECW, I'm gonna be extremely honest with you, were the One Night Stand shows. And I know a lot of people my age were definitely introduced to ECW when it came to the One Night Stand shows. Now, granted, this was like around 2011. I became a fan in 2010, but I was introduced to ECW with like the true ECW, to be quite honest with you, with the One Night Stand shows. Of course, the first One Night Stand happened the previous year, 2005, which was a freaking awesome pay-per-view. If you guys haven't checked out that pay-per-view, bro, watch ECW One Night Stand 2005. It's a really good show. It's a whole reunion show, and it was originally supposed to be a reunion show on that particular show, because originally they released this DVD called The Rise and Fall of ECW, and my dumbass, I have the DVD, by the way. And it's on Peacock, but I have the DVD. I love physical media. I have the DVD itself. My dumbass didn't even bring it to the studio right here. But yeah, the DVD, the documentary itself is amazing. If you guys haven't checked out the documentary, check out the documentary. It goes legitimately in depth about the story of ECW. If you don't really have a lot of knowledge on ECW, the Rise and Fall of ECW is definitely one of the best documentaries WWE has put out, and it came out in 2004. And that whole DVD became a whole success. And with the success of the DVD, of course, we all know the story. Rob Van Dam went to Vince McMahon and asked, how about we do an ECW pay-per-view and all that stuff? And Vince McMahon basically greenlighted it and said, wow, yeah, we can do that. So they greenlighted an ECW a One Night Stand in 2005, and it became an instant success. Of course, the matches on that show, the WWE roster at the time had a lot. And a lot of ECW guys, they had the Dudleys, they had Rhino. I believe Rhino got fired a couple months prior for the One Night Stand show. Of course, RVD, all those guys in ECW. Of course, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit came through the doors. Rey Mysterio as well, because not only ECW was all about, the hardcore aspect of it, because that's what it's really known for, but it was also known for bringing lucha libre to the United States. With all the luchadors and all that stuff, we can all talk about the wars that Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko had back in the day. But ECW One Night Stand 2005 was an instant success, and arguably the card itself was really good. I mean, you had Masato Tanaka versus Mike Awesome, which they had a crazy ass feud in ECW, a series of matches in ECW. If you guys haven't checked it out, I was actually recently watching Heatwave 2000. I really haven't watched a lot of original ECW. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you, but I was watching this morning ECW Heatwave, not 2000, ECW Heatwave 1998, which is arguably one of ECW's best pay-per-views of all time. Of course, Barely Legal was their very first pay-per-view, but in Heatwave 1998, Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome did face off. But, they did wrestle again at One Night Stand 2005. Of course, the main event was Tommy Dreamer and the one and only Sandman going up against the Dudley Boys, which is a whole slugfest and, all that stuff. It was a really good show. And with the success of ECW One Night Stand 2005, there's a lot of speculation involved, if WWE was going to be bringing back ECW as a full-time brand. And, lo and behold, in May of 2006, the WWE announced, alongside, of course, everybody knew that there was going to be a second One Night Stand, but the WWE announced in May of 2006 that ECW was going to be revived as like a full brand alongside RAW and SmackDown. So ECW was finally coming back. And a lot of people were actually really excited about this. I was doing a lot of research on this, Everybody was really excited about it. And I remember, one of the things that I love going back to is listening to old Brian and Vinny shows. Brian and Vinny, of course, is Brian Alvarez. He's from the Wrestling Observer, Figure 4 online, F4W Online. And, he has a show with Vinny. And, I was watching the old Brian and Vinny episode of ECW One Night Stand 2006. And it really dawned on me because one of the things Brian Alvarez stated in that review is the fact that, really the true aspect and the true really good thing about the show. I mean, the show itself was awesome, but the true good thing about the show was really the fans. I mean, the fans in the Hammerstein Ballroom are arguably one of the most ruthless fans in the entire world, man. You can go to an AEW show and it kind of, in a way, has that aspect, but if you watch any ECW show, whether it be like an original ECW show, the One Night Stand shows, I mean, the first two One Night Stand shows were definitely ECW authentic, especially the first one. The second one felt more like a WWE versus ECW vibe because of the fact that it was an official kickoff of the new brand that the WWE was reviving. But still, it kind of had that ECW feel to it. And overall, the show was awesome. Of course, the main event of ECW One Night Stand 2006 was John Cena going up against Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam, who did win the Money in the Bank, the second ever Money in the Bank, back at WrestleMania 22, 2 months prior in April of 2006. It was a big deal for RVD because of the fact that RVD was one of the guys that was just so over with the crowd. Because he was one of those wrestlers that, RVD is just one of those wrestlers that, to be quite honest with you, is just him. He's just cool. He's one of those cool wrestlers. Like, the thing about RVD that makes him so cool, and if you watched his documentary on Peacock, man, watch his documentary, man. His documentary is fucking awesome. He was really that guy that was just being himself, and that was really the beauty of RVD. He was being himself, and RVD was just so over with the crowd, and to the point where, of course, in the first One Night Stand, he basically cut a promo, a non-scripted promo. He was shooting from the heart, as he said in that promo, and he was talking about, how this was better than being at WrestleMania and all that stuff. It was a really good show because RVD was injured and couldn't compete at the first One Night Stand because of the fact that he had to get knee surgery. But RVD is back at the Hammerstein Ballroom, and he is wrestling John Cena in the main event, cashing in. And John Cena, I swear to you, man, got the craziest reaction I could possibly imagine. I mean, both John Cena and Randy Orton had insane reactions with the crowd. And, speaking of Hammerstein, a little, mention of this. Of course, we can all talk about GCW's The World on GCW show. Granted, I'm not the biggest GCW watcher. I started watching GCW around probably I think it was Homecoming Part 1. I only saw Homecoming Part 1. That was my first GCW show, and that was the show where Matt Cardona faced Nick Gage. It was at the Showboat. I didn't go there. I was watching it on television on Fight. And, of course, if you really look at a GCW crowd, it really has that ECW vibe to it. And, of course, they're returning to the Hammerstein Ballroom this Sunday, which I will definitely be watching. I am actually really excited about that show. Granted, I'm not the biggest GCW watcher. I only watch there and there a couple of times whenever something big is going down. And quite frankly, the World on GCW is arguably GCW's biggest show. And a lot of people are saying, GCW is probably going to be the next ECW. But fuck it, they're the first GCW regardless. But ECW One Night Stand 2006, of course, headlined by John Cena versus Rob Van Dam. Again, this was built as a WWE versus ECW show. And this show didn't disappoint. And, after this show, a lot of people had hopes for the ECW brand that WWE was reviving because ECW was going to be returning to television on the Sci-Fi Network. Yes, they put ECW on the Sci-Fi channel. Originally, the original company of ECW was on TNN, but TNN did screw them over for the WWF. There's a whole story on that. Of course, it led to Paul Heyman shooting straight at TNN on their own network. If you guys, it's on YouTube. Go check it out. It's a really good promo. He was like, you better take $100 million that you're going to give to Vince McMahon. You better spend it on attorneys. They did a whole storyline on TNN in the last few months of ECW. I think it was throughout like 1999 and 2000 where they were like doing a whole storyline of ECW with Don Callis, a.k.a., and I called him this so many times on my Dynamite reviews, a.k.a. Cyrus the Virus. He was basically representing the network. But it was actually really interesting. I actually really enjoyed that. But, that's another story for another time. But we're going to be talking about ECW One Night Stand 2006. The show kicks off, of course, with the fans all around the Hammerstein Ballroom. And the previous year, and I'm going to keep on mentioning the previous year because, One Night Stand 2005 was like the reunion show, and this is the official kickoff. But in the original One Night Stand, the first One Night Stand, Joey Styles actually, came up on commentary and welcomed everybody to the show. That was really what ECW was in the original ECW. Every single show, it would start off with Joey Styles, welcoming us to the show, but it was a little different. Joey Styles was already on commentary, and, this show started off with Paul Heyman. Of course, he cuts a promo, a heartfelt promo, just like he did the previous year, saying, the tribe of Extreme has risen again, they're going to pour their Kool-Aid right down the throat, and they're going to realize that it all started here tonight. Basically was saying, just cutting your typical Paul Heyman ECW promo, Paulie Dangerously, like that was really his promo. And, of course, he talks about, this is better than Monday Night Raw. This is better than Friday Night SmackDown. This, my friends, is ECW, all that stuff. It was the closing of the promo segment was basically the same as the previous year. Now, granted, the previous year is actually really entertaining, and same as this one. This promo by Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman always is entertaining on the microphone. There's like, I cannot recall any bad promo that Paul Heyman cut. Like, Paul Heyman is arguably the best manager, like arguably the best person on the microphone. Period, man. Paul Heyman is that damn good. But of course, on the previous year's One Night Stand, he would talk about JBL. The reason why he was WWE champion for a year was because Triple H did not want to work Tuesdays. He was shooting on Edge and Matt Hardy. Of course, Edge and Matt Hardy had this whole, love triangle thing with Lita, which was actually real, by the way, which transformed later on into a storyline. But that was, of course, Paul Heyman just cuts to your typical Paul Heyman promo, introducing you guys, of course, to like the show, ECW, all that stuff. We got a video package of like really, really like, old school ECW video package. Then the introduction. And then the first match of the evening is going to be Jerry the King Lawler. Now, remember previously when I stated that this show was a little bit different, similar, but at the same time different than the first One Night Stand. And that is because of the fact that this was, the majority of the card was definitely a kickoff to the new brand of ECW, but at the same time, it was more of a WWE versus ECW card. And one of these feuds that was going on, of course, is Jerry the King Lawler going up against Taz. Yes, Taz is coming out of retirement in this particular show. Taz was, of course, the commentator for SmackDown. That's how I was introduced to Taz. Taz was the commentator for SmackDown at the time. Now, granted, again, I became a fan in 2010, but I would watch a lot of old matches around like 2011, 2012, so I know this stuff. And I do a lot of research, and I was just, I became a fan thereof. I'm that type of person that, has guilty pleasure for bad stuff. Like, I kind of have a soft spot for, like, the first few months of the ECW relaunch, because, yes, it wasn't ECW authentic, but at the same time, you had to know that, like, this is WWE we're talking about. They're not going to be doing shit like this every week on the new brand. But Jerry the King Lawler versus Taz, of course. Jerry Lawler was at the time the color commentator for Raw, of course, with the greatest duo in the history of pro wrestling, Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler, arguably my favorite commentary team of all time. Man, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler always have amazing chemistry with one another. And of course, Jerry the King Lawler has basically a history with talking shit about ECW, calling ECW extremely crappy wrestling. But Taz, of course, was the commentator for SmackDown. And, the previous week, you had Taz talking, basically leaving SmackDown for the ECW commentary team. And he's going to be later on in the commentary booth with Joey Styles. So Joey Styles is not going to be commentating this show on his own. But in Jerry's entrance, what happens is Jerry Lawler slaps Joey Styles. No, Jerry Lawler, he slaps Joey Styles on commentary. Then he goes to the ring. So he slaps Joey Styles. Now, granted, the commentary table is where the stage is. And the stage is not big because they're in Hammerstein Ballroom. And ECW was never the big, it never had the biggest budget. ECW, had a little set all the time, ECW is never flamboyant. It was legitimately underground. That was basically the beauty of ECW. There were the underground outlaws, the underground rebels, I should say. But Jerry slaps Joey Styles on commentary, and I swear to you, that was a stiff ass slap by Jerry Lawler. I will say that. But then, he goes to the ring. The match starts. Out of nowhere, Joey Styles goes in the ring. He tries to jump on the back of Jerry Lawler, but what happens? Jerry reverses it and looks like he's about to hit a pile driver on Joey Styles. But what happens is that Taz catches Jerry Lawler for the Taz mission. Jerry, the King Lawler, fades. And then what happens? Taz instantly wins the match. I wouldn't really call this an official match, but it was on the card. But I will say this was really entertaining. And, the crowd loved it. Again, the crowd at Hammerstein Ballroom is arguably the most intense and the most ruthless crowd in any wrestling show. That's just my opinion. You can go to an AEW, a WWE show, like a WWE show in Chicago. They can be ruthless. A WWE show in Brooklyn, an AEW show. AEW really kind of has similar vibes when it comes to ECW, when it comes to cities like New York, when it comes to cities like Chicago, Philadelphia, New Jersey. But almost every week, whenever AEW goes to town, they always have really nice crowds. But when it comes to ECW, almost every single show, and I mean every single show, had, just insane crowds. And, that's one of the things, I like what I've seen of GCW is like GCW really keeps the spirit of ECW alive. And that's what I really love about GCW. Again, I don't watch a lot of GCW, but I'm definitely going to be watching the World on GCW, of course, this Sunday, January 23rd. I'm really excited to see that. But it was Jerry Lawler versus Taz. Not really a long match. It was really short. Taz won by just applying the Taz mission. All right, we get a video package on the previous week's WWE versus ECW head-to-head special. So this WWE versus ECW head-to-head was a special that aired on the previous Wednesday before the One Night Stand show on the USA Network. And it was like a special show. It was like a situation in which WWE didn't realize that, this is how. Now I'm gonna go back to what Brian Alvarez was talking about in the Brian and Vinny show in his old review on the Brian and Vinny show of ECW One Night Stand. Of course, him and Vinny. They were basically stating, and I totally agree. Like, this show was definitely the WWE versus ECW special was definitely like what you would basically see on Sci-Fi. So it was kind of like two different variations. So like this. What you will see on this particular show was not what you were going to get every week. Like, there's going to be some weeks where they will go like over the board and some stuff like that. But every week they're not going to be doing stuff like that. And, people need to realize, especially back in 2006, if you're calling this ECW, of course you expect, a lot of brutal and violence and all that stuff. And ECW, when they brought it back, they definitely did water it down when they first moved to Sci-Fi. I will say that. And, really didn't have that same feel. It tried to, make itself different from Raw and SmackDown, but over the next couple months, especially after Paul Heyman got fired, after the December to Dismember, which was a whole debacle of a show. It became just the same WWE show. But the WWE versus ECW special, of course, was like what you will basically see on like ECW on Sci-Fi. And this ECW One Night Stand show was definitely what you will see at the pay-per-view, because they will not be doing what they were doing on this particular show every week, because they did a lot of shit on this show. WWE went crazy on this show. I will admit that WWE went crazy. They would never go this crazy at all anymore. I will tell you guys that right now. But of course, they showed, Big Show betraying ECW in the Battle Royal. And of course, they had John Cena versus Sabu in an Extreme Rules match. Yes, they had an Extreme Rules match. And it was so weird because the match ended in a DQ. And I'm like, wait, this is an Extreme Rules match. Why did it end in a DQ? It made absolutely no sense. Here is the first official match, I would like to say, of the evening. Kurt Angle versus Randy Orton. This match was really entertaining. It was a really good match. I really enjoyed this match. Of course, Kurt Angle was the draft pick by Paul Heyman for the new ECW brand, which, by the way, Kurt Angle did not last long in ECW at all. He only lasted like 3 months in the brand before eventually getting released from the company, or, leaving the company, I should say, like requesting his release from the company. Of course, he refused to go to rehab. He was dealing with painkillers, all that stuff. And then eventually what happened, like 2 months later, he went to TNA, and, his first match there, he faced against Samoa Joe and basically beat Samoa Joe's winning streak. But again, Kurt Angle, what I will say about Kurt Angle, going to the new ECW, I mean, like, it was actually, I actually really, like, dug that. Kurt Angle, I mean, at this point, Kurt Angle was definitely, was like the prime. Like, he was like the best wrestler in the prime of his career. Like, he was literally one of the best wrestlers in the world during this period of time. And you can really tell, like, a lot of people would call Kurt Angle Perk Angle because of the shit that he would do. And then when he went to TNA, he did a lot of other crazy shit. Like, the guy would do freaking somersaults off the stage on Abyss. He did a lot of crazy shit. But, like, of course, this was during the time where he was still in his last few months in the WWE before he eventually left. And, Kurt Angle was doing a lot of, the wrestling machine stuff. And that got over really well with the fans. And I will say this, the ECW crowd absolutely supported and adored Kurt Angle. They basically brought in Kurt Angle with open arms. And that was actually the really good thing I actually really enjoyed about this crowd, If there is a guy in the WWE that ECW fans actually really enjoyed, and, he was going to be like this new guy in ECW, the ECW fans would just absolutely support it. Randy Orton, on the other hand, actually, he got shit on, and I mean shit on bad, The crowd absolutely shits on Randy Orton. Randy Orton actually, when he was actually coming down the ring, there was middle fingers everywhere, and I mean, you saw middle fingers everywhere, like left and right. You just saw flat out middle fingers all the time. The crowd in Hammerstein Ballroom, of course, absolutely loves Kurt Angle. And actually, when Randy Orton's actually walking down the ring, a kid actually punched him, and actually Randy Orton faced off with the kid, but then he eventually left. That was actually really, like, insane. Like, a fan actually punked out Randy Orton. I'm like, I don't want to say punked out because he was just a kid, but, like, bruh, he deadass punched Randy Orton. How fucking stupid are you? He would definitely beat that kid's ass if, like, it was not at the show, but, he was lucky he was actually a crowd in the front row. But the match starts. We got fuck 'em up, and, I'm throughout this review, I'm definitely going to be repeating, a lot of chants here. We get fuck 'em up Angle chants. Randy goes to the outside, and then the crowd calls him a pussy, which was hilarious. Kurt with the double leg takedown. He targets the ankle for the ankle lock, but Randy tries to escape. Randy then eventually escapes. Randy then goes back inside. Both proceed to lock up. We get a side headlock takeover by Angle. Then we get fuck you Orton chants, which is hilarious. Side headlock by Kurt. We got a shoulder tackle by Kurt. A side headlock takeover again by Kurt. We got a cover by Angle. We get a near fall. Kurt tries to get Orton, but Orton escapes again. We have a pussy chance again on Randy Orton, which is hilarious. Orton goes back. Double leg takedown again by Kurt Angle. And there was a lot of technical wrestling abilities in the beginning stages of this match. Really, I should say throughout this match. Kurt then bitch slaps Orton after that. And then we get you get bitch slap chance, which is funny as hell. We get a takedown again by Kurt. And then we get hepatitis chance. I mean, like, I swear, like, this crowd is insane, bro. Like, this crowd is ridiculous, bro. And I mean that, like, in, like, the most sincere way. Like, this crowd is honestly, like, the most funniest crowd I've ever heard. Kurt then asks Randy to put a hold on him. So Kurt is actually, like, asking Randy to, like, hit him. Orton then does, but then Kurt breaks it. We get a side headlock by Orton, but then Kurt breaks out again. We get a belly-to-back suplex by Kurt. Sends Orton to the corner, but Orton then ducks. Then Kurt then runs to the turnbuckle. Orton is in control. We get a couple of forearms and kicks by Orton. We get an uppercut by Orton. We get a couple of shots to the back of Kurt. Kurt then goes crazy with a major takedown on Randy Orton. We get a back elbow by Orton. We get a cover and a one count. And then the crowd chants, "Go fuck Cena," which was, bruh, this crowd, I swear to God, bruh. Wrestlers nowadays, I mean, like, Ringside News posted a meme, saying, wrestlers these, back in the day, John Cena went to the fucking Hammerstein Ballroom and, got a crazy ass like reaction from the crowd. And I mean, a really like, negative crowd by the reaction from the crowd. And nowadays wrestlers cannot handle Twitter. I mean, I don't know if you can really make that comparison, but I mean, bro, like this crowd was really bad. Like, think of Twitter. I mean, I don't even want to think of Twitter. You know what? Screw Twitter. Fuck Twitter, because Twitter didn't even exist in 2006, okay? But we get a cover by Orton and a near fall. We get a couple of "you can't wrestle" chants. We get a side headlock by Orton. Kurt reverses. We get a cover by Kurt and a near fall. We get a cover again and a near fall. And then, we get a back elbow by Orton. We get a couple of Orton swallows chants. Orton is in control. We get a side headlock by Orton. Boring chants. Then Kurt then sets up the belly to belly, but then, he hits a headbutt. Then Kurt goes for a German suplex. We get a couple of uppercuts by Orton. Kurt fights back with a couple of uppercuts. We get a forearm to the back of the head of Orton. We get a German by Kurt. Kurt then holds on. He hits 3 Germans after that. Then after that, Orton reverses the angle slam. We get a drop kick by Orton. We get a cover and a near fall. The crowd then chants, "Fuck you, Orton." We get a belly to back suplex by Kurt. Orton then he gets hit with the angle slam. Then we get a cover and a near fall. Then the crowd just chants to Kurt Angle, "Break his ankle," which was insane. Kurt then applies the ankle lock, but then Randy reverses Kurt and sends him to the corner. We get a neck breaker by Orton. We get a cover and a near fall. Kurt then counters the RKO, sends Orton to the corner. We get a back elbow in the corner. Then Orton goes to the top. We get a crossbody by Orton. Kurt then reverses it into a cover, but we get a near fall. We get a clothesline by Orton. Kurt then counters the RKO. Kurt then catches Randy for the ankle lock, but then we get a roll-up reversal by Randy Orton, which is actually really good. We get a near fall. Then Kurt catches Orton into the ankle lock. Randy taps out, and Kurt Angle wins the match. Overall thoughts, it was a really good match, not only for the crowd, but, the match itself I thought was actually really good. A really technical wrestling match. And, this was like kind of like the start of like how, they were actually going to start booking Kurt Angle in the new ECW, because they were booking Kurt Angle like, he was like going to murder everybody. That was really the whole purpose of Kurt Angle in the new ECW. Like, they were going to really build him as like this whole, like, I mean, they already built him as a wrestling machine, but like they were going to be like, this is the ECW wrestling machine right here. And Kurt did really well. After the match, Randy asks for 2 referees to walk him out. Again, we get those pussy chants. And then after that, we get the fuck out chants, which is hilarious. And I've said that so many freaking times, but it's true. The next matchup of the evening is the FBI versus Super Crazy and Tajiri. Of course, the FBI, Little Guido, a.k.a. Nunzio. He was originally Nunzio in the WWE, but he was actually originally in ECW as well, and he was named Little Guido. Of course, FBI, that being the full-blooded Italians. FBI, Big Guido as well as in here, Tony Mamaluke as well, going up against Super Crazy and the Japanese Buzzsaw Tajiri. My bad. My throat was like messed up right there. But we get welcome back chants by everybody, especially by Super Crazy and Tajiri. I will say this. I love Super Crazy. Super Crazy is insane. What can I say about Tajiri? I mean, Tajiri is just one of the best, Japanese wrestlers out there. He's just freaking awesome, man. Tajiri is the shit. I love Tajiri. I was a big fan of Tajiri. He was in the WWE as well. But we get Tony and Super Crazy chat. Tony Mamaluke and Super Crazy start. Both lock up. Both then lock up again. If I mess up, if I skip a couple of spots, that's because of the fact that there's just so much going on in this particular match. Because, of course, this is a lot. There's a bunch of high flying in this match, of course. Super Crazy and Tajiri, especially, like, those guys are stiff as hell. But we get a waist lock by Tony. We get a takeover by Crazy. Hammerlock by Tony Mamaluke. Tajiri then goes for repeated stomps, and he's not even the legal man. Tajiri chants, and then we get a head scissors by Super Crazy. We get a side headlock by Tony Mamaluke. Then Crazy is in control. We get a cover by Super Crazy and a near fall. Then after that, we get a right hand by Crazy. Crazy then goes for a hip toss. Then Tony Mamaluke goes for a hip toss as well. Super Crazy then face plants Tony. Then we got a standing moonsault by Super Crazy. Then we get a cover and a near fall. We get an uppercut by Tony Mamaluke. Little Guido then tags in. Tajiri then tags in. Both then go at it. We get a couple of kicks by Tajiri. We get a tilt-a-world backbreaker and then an armbar applied by Little Guido. Then we get a stomp at Guido. Then Guido at this point is in control. We get a single leg Boston Crab by Tajiri. Then he sends Guido to the corner. He takes Guido upside down. We get a drop kick on Tony by Super Crazy. He takes Tony upside down and onto the other turnbuckle. And then we get a sliding drop kick on each corner by both Super Crazy and Tajiri, which is amazing. We get a cover by Tajiri and a near fall. Crazy then tags in. Super Crazy then with the first of a triple moonsault that he was going to do in the corner. Then Tony takes Guido on the outside, but Crazy hits a springboard moonsault on the outside. Big Guido then pulls Crazy outside of the ring. Then Little Guido works on Crazy on the outside. Big Guido then throws Crazy to the ring. We get a cover by Little Guido, and then we get a near fall. Tony Mamaluke then tags in. We get a double team attempt by, of course, the FBI, both Tony Mamaluke and Little Guido. Then Crazy throws Tony to the mat. We get a cover into near fall. Tony then applies the camel clutch. Then Guido hits a shotgun drop kick. Then after that, Tajiri comes in and goes crazy with a bunch of kicks. Then we get an elbow drop by Little Guido. Crazy hits a slapjack. Then after that, Tajiri tags in. I think it was called the slapjack. I probably got that wrong. Forgive me. Tajiri tags in. We get a kick by Guido. We get a spinning heel kick, by Tajiri. We get a cover into near fall. Tajiri then applies a unique submission style, which I don't even know what the hell that was. But then we get a hamstring elbow by Tajiri. Then we get a couple of kicks by Tajiri. We get a kick on Guido by Tajiri. We get a cover into near fall. We get a double tarantula by both Tajiri and Super Crazy in each corner of the ring on the ropes. I think it was in between the top and middle rope. Then Big Guido then comes in, but we get double kicks by Crazy and Tajiri on Big Guido. Then we get double drop kicks on Big Guido, taking Big Guido out. We get a double clothesline by the FBI. At this point, the FBI is in control. Tajiri's on the top. We get a double Fisherman facebuster by the FBI. We get a cover, and the FBI win the match. Overall thoughts on this match: very fast paced, a lot of great spots in the match. I really enjoyed this match. Tajiri is amazing. Super Crazy is fucking awesome. I love the teamwork between Tony Mamaluke and Little Guido. The FBI was actually really underrated. I really like the FBI. The FBI was really underrated, in my opinion. I believe Little Guido, aka Nunzio, was the Cruiserweight champion. I may be wrong. I may be a dumbass here. Was he the Cruiserweight champion? Because I remember him being on SmackDown back in like 2003, 4, and stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong. Put in the comments below if he was the Cruiserweight champion. Correct me if I'm wrong. Big Show then comes out after the match. He faces Big Guido, and then we get a low blow on Big Guido after that. Crazy then misses a crossbody, but then the Big Show hits a kick on Tajiri. We get a backbreaker on Big Show on Tony Mamaluke. He basically ragdolls everybody, and this is like the new. This is basically the new Big Show because, of course, Big Show is in ECW. Out of all people, you had to draft to ECW. You had to draft Big Show. No offense to Big Show, I'm a fan of Big Show, but like out of all the people you could have drafted, you drafted Big Show. What? Now I'm gonna be talking about how I would have booked Big Show in my ECW on Sci-Fi review, which is the next episode, but I will talk about how I would book Big Show, to be quite honest with you. Because they did Big Show all wrong in ECW, in my opinion. He was the ECW champion because, of course, he beat RVD after RVD got busted for drugs and then he got suspended, but that's another story for another time. But I'm gonna talk about how I would book Big Show in my next episode. All right. JBL then comes out, of course, in one of the sections of the Hammerstein Ballroom, actually in the same section where the Crusaders came in the previous year. We get "Fuck You SmackDown" chants, which was hilarious. JBL, there was a lot of stories on JBL when it came to like backstage bullying and all that stuff, but you cannot deny JBL is one of those wrestlers that can generate legit heel heat. Think of MJF now. JBL was somebody you would love, and I mean you would love to pay money to see them see him get his ass kicked. Because, like, JBL can go there. He can generate that crazy ass heat. I will say that. Now, granted, sometimes the WWE, especially when they pushed JBL back in 2004, they kind of did sometimes go over the line. I will admit that. But I will say this, JBL, was a really fucking good heel. He was really good at like being a heel, but you cannot deny he was legitimately a backstage bully. But then he comes out, he talks shit about the fans, right? And then he recognizes the ECW ring. And then we get "You Suck Dick" chants. And then you know what JBL says? He says he sees no women out here, but they are chanting about a male organ. And now who's the fruit booty? And then he talks about what happened last year. And he talks about the whole Blue Meanie incident. If you guys don't recall, back in ECW One Night Stand, the first One Night Stand show, of course, when that whole brawl broke loose between the ECW wrestlers and the Crusaders, you know, there was one section of that whole entire brawl which was actually a legit shoot. Now, apparently JBL was drunk during that moment, and he just legit, like, just went for straight legit shots at Blue Meanie to the point where, like, Blue Meanie was just, like, bleeding and all that stuff, which actually led to a feud, I believe, with the Blue World Order and JBL for, like, a short amount of time on SmackDown after that. But then, of course, that became, like, a big story, and a lot of fans were, like, you know, talking about how that was, like, basically, like, the dawn of, like, JBL being a bully. Like, that whole, like, thing with the whole Blue Meanie incident, like, that was, like, really the dawn of, like, JBL's a bully and all that shit. But then after that, of course, he talks about that, and he says, you know, he mocks the fans for them writing online saying JBL is a bully, and he talks about how geeks love the Sci-Fi Channel, and now they get their ECW. And then he tells Taz that he leaves network television for the Sci-Fi Channel, and then he announces that he will be replacing Taz on the color commentary role for SmackDown. And, of course, that led to, of course, him being in the commentary desk with Michael Cole on SmackDown, which, you know, him being on the commentary, I mean, like, again, there were some points him being on commentary where, like, yes, he could be, like, a legit heel, but, like, at the same time, like, he would sometimes just go over the line. Like, he would say things like you would never hear on WWE commentary anymore, especially in 2022. And there were, like, some things that he said were just, like, real. I'm like, why the fuck did you say that? But, like, JBL, he was the color commentator for SmackDown for, like, 2 years. All right. Here's one match that I actually really enjoyed, but the finish was actually really fucking stupid. Rey Mysterio versus Sabu for the World Heavyweight Championship. Of course, this is the first of 2 championships that were going to be defended on this show. Of course, this match, of course, being for the big gold belt, the World Heavyweight Championship, is arguably my favorite belt design ever. I love the big gold belt, and, you know, I'm actually really surprised that that belt lasted the way it did. Of course, it lasted all the way up till 2013, until TLC 2013. No. Yeah, well, they did unify the belts, but no, it actually lasted until SummerSlam 2014, so that's actually, you know, it lasted a long time. But, of course, this is arguably a dream match, you know, Sabu versus Rey Mysterio, and fun fact, Rey Mysterio was an ECW original. He did wrestle for ECW. I believe Paul Heyman was the one that brought Rey Mysterio Jr. to the States to wrestle for ECW, and, you know, ECW did bring the Lucha Libre style to ECW, and, you know, basically, of course, you know, there are those stories about, you know, how WCW did the whole cruiserweight division. They was basically taking influence from ECW and all that stuff. And on the rise and fall of ECW, I mean, like, you know, Paul Heyman would talk about how Eric Bischoff would quote unquote steal talent and all that stuff. And, you know, he talked about how he would steal ECW. Eric Bischoff on WCW would steal ECW's ideas with the cruiserweight division and all that stuff. So again, watch the documentary with the rise and fall of ECW. It's arguably one of the best documentaries that WWE put out. It's a really long documentary, but it's really good. And I guarantee you it's a must watch. It's on Peacock. So if you guys have Peacock, watch it. I have Peacock, but I have the DVD as well. Get the DVD. Yes, I still collect physical media. Deal with it. All right. So the match starts. So Sabu has a chair and Rey grabs a chair. So Rey has ECW attire. And the thing about this is the fact that, you know, Rey Mysterio did get booed, even though he was wearing ECW attire. So, like, the fans were not buying it, which sucks for Rey Mysterio, because I'm a big fan of Rey Mysterio. And, of course, this is during the time where Rey Mysterio was the World Heavyweight Champion. He did beat both Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio. Not Rey Mysterio. Kurt Angle and Randy Orton at WrestleMania 22 in that really good triple threat match, of course. And a lot of people talk. You say a lot of negative things about, you know, his title run, and, you know, rightfully so, because WWE, you know, did not want Rey Mysterio, or I should say Vince McMahon did not want Rey Mysterio in that particular position. And, you know, when it came to Rey Mysterio and his whole title run, like, he'd be losing all the time during his title run. Of course, he lost that title to King Booker, and that all led to the whole King Booker thing. But both have a chair. Rey's getting booed even though he has ECW gear, as I stated earlier. The match starts. Both have chairs. We get fuck 'em up Sabu chants. We get a takedown by Sabu, and then we get a side headlock by Rey. Both grab chairs. Then they hit the chairs to each other and then throw them. Sabu then sets up a chair. We get a leg drop by Sabu. Sabu then gets taken to the chair face first. Then Rey hits a Hurricane Rana. Ray then takes Sabu to the middle rope, and he tries to go for the 619, but misses. Sabu then has a chair and then throws it to Rey Mysterio head first, which was brutal. Sabu is known for throwing chairs. Every time, if you guys have heard on my previous reviews, whenever a wrestler would throw a chair to a wrestler, I would say they would throw that chair Sabu style, because Sabu is known for throwing chairs on people's heads. Sabu is one of my favorites, by the way. I'm a big fan of Sabu. So then he sets a table in between the apron and the guardrail later on. Ray is on the top. Sabu then wanted to take Ray through the table, but Ray escapes. Ray at this point is in control on Sabu. Ray then goes to the top. He hits a moonsault, but then we get a cover end and near fall. Then we get a boot by Ray, and then we get a boot by Sabu after that. Ray is then caught on the middle rope. Sabu then hits the guillotine leg drop after that. Then we get a cover end and near fall. Sabu then applies the camel clutch. Of course, shades of the original Sheik, as Joey Styles would say, his uncle, the original Sheik. And then we get a bunch of Sheik chants by the crowd again. ECW is a full-on smart crowd, a ruthless crowd, and a really smart crowd. Think of an AEW crowd, but sum that up times 1 million. That's the ECW crowd. The ECW crowd is extremely brutal, man. But then, of course, after that, Sabu grabs more tables. He goes back in the ring. He hits the Arabian Facebuster with the chair. Then we get a cover into near fall. Sabu then sets up the table on the outside. Ray then hits a drop kick, landing on top of the table. Ray then hits a senton over the top rope, a springboard senton, but then on Sabu going through the table. So they both go through the table. Ray goes to the inside. We get a cover by Ray and a near fall. We get a springboard leg drop by Ray across the back of the neck of Sabu. We get a cover into near fall. He sends Sabu into the corner. Ray then sets up a chair. Ray then misses doing Sabu's move. I believe he tried to do the Arabian Facebuster. Correct me if I'm wrong. I completely missed that spot. But after that, we get a springboard leg lariat by Sabu, and then we get a triple moonsault by Sabu on Rey Mysterio. We get a cover into near fall. Then Sabu misses the atomic Arabian Facebuster off the top and lands on the canvas. He busts his ass landing on top of the chair, which, bro, that must be painful as hell. Sabu is one of those wrestlers that he really just doesn't I always make these comparisons. When it comes to Darby Allin, I tend to compare him with Sabu because Darby Allin's the type of wrestler that really doesn't give a shit about his body. Sabu is one of those wrestlers, man, because, bro, Sabu has, scars all around his body, and Sabu is just, bro, Sabu is, again, he's one of my favorite, wrestlers, not only in ECW, but just one of my favorite wrestlers in general, just because of his daredevil attitude and just the way, he just doesn't give a single fuck about his body. But then after that, of course, after landing on the canvas, Ray then sets up a chair, and Sabu sits on it. He misses the springboard senton and lands on the chair. Then Sabu throws the chair on the head of Rey Mysterio. He takes Ray on top of the table in the other corner of the ring, that first table that he set up earlier on in the match. Then Sabu hits a springboard DDT on Ray through the table. And what happens? The match ends in a no contest because they were, quote-unquote, extremely injured. Now, I will say this. That spot looked really scary. They really did, it looked like they, legitimately, hurt each other, real bad. But at the same time, I believe this was planned, correct me if I'm wrong, because of the fact that the WWE did not want Rey Mysterio to lose. Yet, this is coming from the same company that basically had Rey Mysterio lose so many times during his world title run. They didn't want Rey Mysterio to lose at the in the show. Not only that, they didn't want Sabu to lose. So you know what? Fuck it. They're gonna have a banger of a match, and it's gonna end in a no contest. That's a really bad finish. I would have booked Sabu to win the world title. I would have booked him to win the world title, and have RVD win the world title as well. And then they can both rechristen their titles. Of course, Sabu would have the television championship, and then RVD would have the world championship. That's how I would do it per se. But that's just my opinion. I will talk about that more on my ECW on Sci-Fi debut episode next week. All right, but yeah, we got a bunch of bullshit chants, and yeah, the match ends in a no contest. There's no real winner in this match. Here's one match that was arguably one of the best matches of the night, and the most brutal match of the night. One of the most brutal matches that I've ever seen in my freaking life, and I still say that to this day. That is Edge and Mick Foley versus Terry Funk, a 61-year-old Terry Funk during this period of time, and, of course, the innovator of violence, Tommy Dreamer. So Mick Foley comes in first. He grabs the microphone, and says, yes, I did sell out. I sold out Madison Square Garden, of course. At this time, Mick Foley is a heel, which I never really understood. But, of course, after he had that banger, one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time, of course, Edge versus Mick Foley in that hardcore match. Of course, everybody remembers that flaming table spot that happened when Edge speared Foley through that flaming table. One of the best WrestleMania matches ever, in my opinion. Go watch it. So he talks about how he sold out Madison Square Garden. And, there was a time that he loved ECW. When he respected ECW back in the days, it was ran by a visionary. And you know who that visionary was? You know what he states? Let's hear it for Stephanie McMahon. Yeah, you guys remember when Stephanie McMahon bought ECW back in 2001? I thought that was actually really dumb, by the way. The invasion was really bad. And, it did have promise when they brought in ECW, and they had Paul Heyman there. But why the fuck did you have Stephanie McMahon come in to own ECW when you had Paul Heyman there? That was arguably the stupidest thing ever, in my opinion. That was arguably the dumbest thing the WWE has ever done. And WWE is known for stupid shit. They still do stupid shit to this day. They recently did something about Walter, which I don't even want to mention. But they basically renamed him after, I don't even want to talk about that because that's actually another story for another time. But bruh, WWE is really dumb. But he says, long live the Alliance, which is funny as hell. Then Edge and Lita come out. Edge has the mic and tells Mick that he doesn't want to mess with these fans. It's their night. He tells Mick that he doesn't want to, he says that it's their Christmas. All these fans are going to text their imaginary girlfriend about how good the show was, and then they're going to hop on the internet and then pleasure themselves with his real girlfriend, of course, talking about Lita. Then Lita talks about Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer. Says, last week she beat Tommy Dreamer. When she said on Tommy's face, that was more action in one night than these fans had in 1 year. Ouch. Says that she hopes that it was a lot better for Tommy than it was for her. Then what happens, Tommy Dreamer and Terry Funk come out, but they also come out with Beulah McGillicuddy, of course, that being, she was really, an integral part of ECW back in the original days of the company. And, of course, it's Tommy Dreamer's wife. So then Beulah comes in the ring, and she has the microphone, and she states that she never thought she would see the day that all of the trash that comes out of her mouth... Wait, what? I kind of messed up right there, my words. She never thought that she would see the day that the trash that comes out of her mouth is usually the trash that she usually puts in it, which was actually hilarious. Then she says that they all know how much she loves threesomes and proposes a 3-on-3 match. And then the bottom line is put up or shut up, bitch. And then Lita after that slaps Beulah McGillicuddy. Beulah then wants to fight back, but then, of course, the referee breaks it out. And then the match starts. And I will tell you, this match is insane. These guys just go absolutely ballistic to one another. And the finish of this match, the pinfall finish with Edge, I mean, it was really, I feel like I shouldn't even talk about that because that was actually really I'm like, bro, why would they do that shit? But the match starts. Edge and Tommy Dreamer start. Both lock up. We get a shoulder tackle by Dreamer. Edge misses an enziguri. Mick Foley then tags in. He wants Terry Funk. So Mick Foley's acting all tough like a typical heel would do and says that he wants Terry Funk. We get a bunch of Terry chants by the crowd. Then Tommy Dreamer tags Terry Funk. Both exchange shots. We get a couple of slaps by Terry Funk. So he basically bitch slaps the hell out of Mick Foley. Then Mick backs down. Then Edge targets Terry Funk. Tommy then throws Edge to the outside. Terry then throws a chair on Mick Foley. Terry then slaps Mick on the outside. Tommy has a bunch of signs, like a stop sign or other signs, and hits Edge with them. He throws a trash can in the ring. Terry then hits the garbage can on Edge. We got a baseball slide on Dreamer on Mick onto the garbage can. Dreamer then sends Edge to the post. Edge then ducks the sign, then hits Dreamer with the sign. At this point, Mick is in control over Terry Funk. He takes Terry to the stage. Edge then has a ladder. So he brings out a ladder and runs to Dreamer with the ladder. We get a bunch of fuck you Edge chants. We had a couple of right hands by Edge. He tries to go for the spear, but Dreamer hits the hip toss on Edge on top of the ladder. Then after that, what happens is that Funk and Dreamer set up the ladder. Then what happens is that Terry Funk, at his age, climbs up the ladder, but then Edge pushes the ladder and pushes Terry Funk off, landing him onto the mat. Then Edge grabs the ladder. Tommy then picks up Edge, but Lita hits a low blow. Then we get a She's a Crack Whore chant, which is a common occurrence on any ECW show. She's a Crack Whore chants. Then Edge and Mick Foley then go under the ring and grab a barbed wire board. Yes, a barbed wire board, ladies and gentlemen. Then they take it into the ring. Then they drop the barbed wire board on Tommy Dreamer. Then they pull it out and want to drop it again. But Funk on the outside actually grabs the ankle of Edge, which actually leads to Edge by accident landing the barbed wire board on Mick Foley. Then Dreamer grabs the board. We want fire chants, and trust me, we will have fire in this match. Both Dreamer and Funk send Foley onto the board, but Foley stops. We had a couple of right hands by Dreamer. Then they send Foley to the barbed wire board after that. Then Edge sends Dreamer on top of the guardrail. Then Foley throws the barbed wire board on Funk. Then after that, Foley wraps it around his forearm. We get a shot to the face by Foley on Funk. Funk at this point is bleeding in his eye and he's asking for a doctor. He's literally begging for a doctor. I mean, like, this was actually really scary. Then, after that, Foley drives the wire again onto the eye of Terry Funk. The doctors then come in. Then Terry gets taken out by the doctors. Edge then gets the garbage lid. He hits it on Dreamer. And then, once Terry Funk, got escorted out by the doctors, we want Sandman chants. And, a lot of people would expect Sandman to come in on this match because, of course, Tommy Dreamer and Sandman were tag team partners. I mean, not official tag team partners, but, they would team together on multiple occasions. I mean, we never got that. He did appear on the show, though. So then he hits the garbage lid on Dreamer. Foley then he brings in a baseball bat with barbed wire. He hits it on Dreamer. Then Lita comes in and takes the bat in between the legs of Dreamer. Lita then hits the leg drop after. We want Sandman chance again. Mick pulls out Mr. Sacco and then hits the mandible claw on Beulah McGillicuddy. I told you this match would go crazy. Then Dreamer goes after Foley. Then he goes for the mandible claw on Dreamer. Then Edge hits the spear. Then all of a sudden what happens? Edge and Lita target Beulah McGillicuddy. Then Edge grabs Beulah, but then Terry Funk comes in out of nowhere with a barbed wire 2x4. Then we get a low blow by Dreamer on Foley and Edge. Funk then hits Foley with the 2x4 and then on Edge. Then Beulah hits the 2x4. She lights the 2x4 on fire, hits it on Foley. Foley then falls on the barbed wire board, and then we get a shot to the back by Edge on Funk, sending Funk to the barbed wire board. Then Dreamer then hits a DDT on Edge. Dreamer then wraps the barbed wire board around the face of Edge. After that, Lita comes in to make the save. But then Beulah comes in. What happens? A whole ECW catfight just breaks loose. Tommy then picks up Lita, and he proceeds to actually hit the, Joey Styles would say on commentary, the Dreamer driver, but I'm just going to call it the Death Valley driver because that's what it basically is. It's the Death Valley driver. So Edge then hits Dreamer onto the barbed wire. After that, timeout. Then Edge then takes Dreamer onto the barbed wire. Then all of a sudden, what happens in the finish? He spears Beulah McGillicuddy. He has this, inappropriate position, which I really just do not want to mention. We get a cover, and they win the match. That finish was kind of messed up. I will admit that. It was actually really messed up. But they win the match. What are my thoughts on this match? This match was arguably brutal. With Terry Funk, literally screaming for a doctor after, he gets his eye injured. I mean, bro, this match was extremely, this whole match defines the whole definition of hardcore. And I mean, these guys just absolutely all these people tore the house down. And, Terry Funk, he played an integral part in the history of ECW. And, Terry Funk just doesn't give a damn about what he does to his body. Another guy, flat out respect to everybody involved in that match. I mean, that was a crazy ass match. And a lot of people say that was definitely the best match of the night. The next match of the evening is Balls Mahoney versus Masato Tanaka. This was a short match. Of course, Masato Tanaka, very famous for no-selling crazy-ass chair shots by Mike Awesome. Of course, he wrestled Mike Awesome in the previous year on ECW One Night Stand. Balls Mahoney, of course, he's actually going to be in the ECW brand as well. He's actually one of the guys. There's going to be a lot of ECW originals in the ECW brand, but then over time, they would just left. But I'll talk about that in my ECW on Sci-Fi review. Balls Mahoney versus Masato Tanaka. Match short. Both lock up. Get a shoulder tackle by Balls. Balls then counters the hip toss for a hip toss of his own. Tanaka then goes for multiple hip tosses. We get a crossbody by Tanaka. We get a cover into near fall. Balls then gets sent to the corner. Tanaka goes for a running forearm. We get a power slam by Balls Mahoney. Balls then goes for repeated rights with the fans chanting balls, balls, balls every time he does a particular right-hand shot. Then Balls runs to the outside. Tanaka goes over the top rope and tries to hit a DDT, but does not succeed. And then we get repeated rights on the outside by Balls Mahoney after that. Then after that, he grabs a beer cup from a fan and throws it to the face of Tanaka, which is hilarious. I constantly say hilarious. That's like a main word that I always say. Balls then all of a sudden, Tanaka grabs a water bottle and throws it to the face of Balls, which was awesome. Balls then gets sent to the guardrail, but then Balls gains control. Balls then takes Tanaka back in the ring. Balls goes to the top. Tanaka comes in. He hits a superplex. We get a cover into near fall. Then Tanaka goes to the top. Then Balls comes in. Then Balls all of a sudden hits his superplex of his own on Tanaka. We get a cover into near fall. Both then grab their own particular chairs, and it's a whole slugfest when it came to the chairs. They just shot each other with the freaking chairs. Then Tanaka misses a chair shot. What happens? Balls, in typical Balls Mahoney fashion, God rest his soul. Balls Mahoney, of course, he unfortunately passed away, I believe, in 2016. Balls Mahoney, God rest his soul. But Balls hits the chair right to the head in a crazy-ass chair shot to Masato Tanaka. We got a cover, and Balls Mahoney wins the match. Really good match. Really short match, but it was a really good match. But, Masato Tanaka is a crazy motherfucker. We got a Eugene segment. Basically, I'm not even going to talk about this because I'm running out of time because Dynamite is about to start in, probably less than 20 minutes. But before the match, he wants to say he loves ECW, basically cuts a promo. This was basically just some filler thing before the main event. Sandman comes in, when Eugene is talking about his poem, Sandman comes in with, he does not come out with Enter Sandman, of course, because WWE does not own the rights to Enter Sandman. And if you watch the DVD of One Night Stand 2005, of course, Sandman had that iconic entrance at One Night Stand 2005 with, of course, Enter Sandman as his main theme, because that was his main theme in the original ECW. But he had a really awesome entrance, by far his best entrance in ECW One Night Stand 2005. And in this show, they completely changed it with the random Jim Johnson theme. But after that, he just canes the hell out of Eugene multiple times, and that's it. So we got RVD versus John Cena for the WWE Championship. Of course, RVD winning the Money in the Bank back at WrestleMania 22. Arguably, a lot of people were clamoring for RVD to win this match. And, I'm going to be straight up. If WWE, booked John Cena to win at the Hammerstein Ballroom, they will definitely be known as arguably the dumbest people in wrestling. Because, the fans would definitely riot if John Cena had won this match, to be quite honest with you. But the RVD is extremely over, of course. We got the famous poster if Cena wins, we riot. Cena is absolutely hated. So the match starts. Constantly, so many different times, John Cena tries to throw his shirt to the crowd, but then, think about Cody Rhodes throwing his belt to the crowd. Remember that Dynamite a couple weeks ago in Chicago where Cody Rhodes threw the belt in the crowd, and then the crowd threw it back? This happened to John Cena so many times on this particular match. But then that last person throwing the shirt back was arguably the best one because you can just see it. You can literally snapshot it. John Cena and a whole group of people just flipping him off. I mean, this was insane. Then we get toilet paper thrown at Cena. Then the match, they officially start the match. What happens? Both lock up. We get a Cena swallows chance. We get a right hand in the corner by Cena. We get you can't wrestle chance after that. We got a suplex by Cena. We got a cover and a 1 count. Both then lock up again. We got a shoulder tackle by Cena. RVD then reverses an Enzuigiri, but reverses it with a reverse Enzuigiri, was actually really dope, by the way. We get whole fucking show chance, of course. RVD is the whole fucking show. Then after that, both face off. Both proceed to exchange shots. We get a boo for John Cena and a yeah for RVD. We get a power slam by Cena. We get a cover engineer fall. Then all of a sudden, Cena clotheslines RVD to the outside. We get a same old shit chant. Cena goes to the top. He drops on RVD on the outside. We get a you still sucks chant. Cena then is in control on RVD onto the outside. We get overrated chants as well, which is hilarious. We get a moonsault by RVD on the outside. RVD then grabs a chair. We get a right hand by Cena. He sends RVD to the guardrail. We get a boot by RVD after that. Then Cena pushes RVD to the crowd. Then he puts the fuck you Cena poster on top of RVD, takes it out, and then right hands RVD, which is actually it's fucking awesome. I like that. That was actually one of my favorite moments in the match. But then after that, he hits a right hand. We get a right hand then by RVD. Cena is on top of the guardrail after that. Then RVD hits a corkscrew left. No, he's not on top of the guardrail. He's on top of the apron. He no, he is on top of the guardrail. My apologies. I kind of messed up right there. He's on top of the guardrail, and then RVD then hits the corkscrew leg drop on Cena. Then RVD is in the ring. We get a bunch of fuck him up Van Dam, fuck him up chants. Again, you gotta love these ECW fans. We get a boot by RVD. We get a guillotine leg drop on the apron by RVD. RVD then grabs the chair. RVD then drops on Cena onto the steel chair into the corner. We get a cover and a near fall. We get a corkscrew leg drop on Cena. The chair is then on top of Cena. RVD then hits the Rolling Thunder, the famous Rolling Thunder, obviously like one of my favorite RVD moves. We get a cover and a near fall. Slam by RVD on Cena after that. RVD then puts the chair on Cena. He misses the split-legged moonsault when Cena brings the chair up. Then we get a DDT onto the chair by John Cena. Then we get a cover and a near fall. We get a bunch of "you can't wrestle" chants after that. Then Cena sets up a chair in between the top and the middle rope and then slingshots RVD through the chair head first. Then we get a cover and a near fall. Then we get a Cena sucks cock chant. Like, these people are insane. You know what I'm saying? These people are crazy, man. Like, honestly, like, these people are flat out crazy. So we get a Cena sucks cock chant. RVD then gets up. We get a back suplex by Cena. Same old shit chants again. Cena then hits the 5-knuckle shuckle. Asshole chants after that. He picks up RVD, but RVD hits the spinning heel kick. We get a bunch of RVD chants. Cena then chants, then we get, he works on RVD in the corner. We get a boot by RVD. Then he goes to the top, but then Cena catches RVD and drops him to the mat. I'm not even going to state that next chant because, quite frankly, you know, as much as I love the crowd in, you know, this show, you know, that one chant that I'm not even going to mention on this is kind of really messed up in my opinion. I'm not even going to mention that chant. You know, there's a chant that I wrote here that you guys probably assume that chant towards John Cena, but I'm not going to state that, man. That's kind of messed up. RVD then picks up Cena. He takes him to the top rope. Then he throws him to the outside. We get a couple of right hands by RVD. We got a drop kick by RVD. RVD then goes under the ring. Then after that, he takes out the table and puts it in the ring and sets it in the corner. Then Cena catches RVD and applies the STFU submission. Of course, that's John Cena's submission right there. RVD then gets his hand on the bottom rope. Cena then doesn't break the hold, but then all of a sudden, when the referee constantly asks him to break the hold, what happens? The referee faces off with John Cena. Cena pushes the referee. The referee pushes him back, and then Cena just clotheslines the ECW referee, which is crazy. So then Cena, after him clotheslining the referee, RVD goes to the top, but then Cena takes him down. We get a superplex by Cena. Cena then takes the steel steps in the ring and hits the steel steps on RVD. RVD is down. Then a SmackDown referee, that being Nick Patrick, comes in. Then we get a cover and a near fall. And then we get a bunch of holy asses chants. Then Cena picks up RVD. He throws RVD on the outside. And then a random person spears John Cena out of nowhere through the table. That person reveals himself. And who is it? It is the one and only Edge, who earlier alongside with Mick Foley, beat the hell out of Tommy Dreamer and Terry Funk, including Beal McGillicuddy as well. And so Edge comes out. And all of a sudden, RVD comes in when Edge walks out. He goes to the top. What happens? He hits the 5-star frog splash. Actually, before he hit the 5-star, RVD was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And then Joey Styles was like, do it. It's your opportunity. Go. We'll take it. And then after that, of course, you know, Joey Styles is extremely biased. He always was. He was always that type of guy that was always biased. But you know what? That's the beauty of Joey Styles. I was a big Joey Styles fan. I'm a big fan of Joey Styles, in my opinion. But then, of course, you know, he hits the 5-star. RVD tries to wake up the referee, but what happens? Paul Heyman comes in, does the referee count. 1, 2, 3. It's official. Even Taz was like, oh, okay, all right. And then what happens? The crowd goes apeshit. And what happens? RVD is the new WWE champion. Actually, no, the ring announcer stated that he's actually the new ECW champion because Paul Heyman did state that RVD was going to rechristen the WWE championship into the ECW championship. But let's be honest, that did not happen. RVD held both the WWE and ECW titles simultaneously. And then, of course, the whole ECW locker room comes in and the crowd celebrates. And that was ECW One Night Stand 2006. overall thoughts on this particular match, I should say first, is that this match was freaking awesome. I really loved this match, to be quite honest with you. This match, John Cena, a lot of people can talk shit about John Cena, but I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. I'm just putting, the reason why I'm looking down right here is because of the fact that I'm putting on the music for the end of this video. That's why. My apologies. But the reason why, the thing about John Cena is, like, people can hate him, but John Cena just doesn't give a damn, and, like, John Cena, like, really just stuck up to his guns. Like, John Cena, man, I have a lot of respect for John Cena. A lot of people do not like John Cena. Bro, John Cena, he always has my respect. I was a John Cena mark when I was little. I'm going to be honest. But, like, going into my teen years, I was like at the beginning of my teen years, I was like, nah, John Cena sucks. I was basically a follower, let's be honest, when it came to that. I was on the Cena sucks bandwagon, but over time, I was like, you know what? John Cena's freaking awesome, man. John Cena actually I have a lot of respect for that guy. But, John Cena got a lot of shit. Randy Orton got a lot of shit as well. But overall thoughts on this show. This show is arguably one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. I'm going to say that right here, right now. This show is arguably one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time because of the fact that, number one, the atmosphere, the matches that were taking place, really the fans were just insane. I mean, like, you definitely see that right now in AEW shows all the time. And, I don't think we'll ever get a show like this, ever again. It's like, nah, we're getting the world on GCW, of course, at the Hammerstein Ballroom this Sunday. What am I talking about? You know what I'm saying? But, GCW definitely reminds me a lot of ECW. And, this show is arguably one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time because, number one, the atmosphere, number two, the matches, and just, the whole storyline aspect of it. But after that, of course, the relaunch, it was definitely a huge disappointment for fans. But that is something that I'm going to be talking about on the next episode of Old School Showcase, where we will be discussing ECW on Sci-Fi, the debut episode of ECW on Sci-Fi. And to be quite honest with you, it was not the best show, but it was not a bad show. But to be quite honest with you, ECW on Sci-Fi as a whole was a complete failure as a brand. But I will talk more about the brand later on in the next episode of Old School Showcase. But yeah, that was my very first episode of Old School Showcase where I discussed ECW One Night Stand 2006. Arguably, this show was amazing. My favorite, arguably one of my favorite, if not my favorite pay-per-view of all time. Just a flat-out awesome-ass pay-per-view. Bar none, balls to the wall. This show was amazing, in my opinion. And I wanted to have this be my first episode because this is one of my favorite shows, and, I really wanted to give you my thoughts about this show. But Old School Showcase and New Shock will be shows that will happen weekly. Of course, the next episode of New Shock will be uploaded on Monday, and of course, Old School Showcase will be uploaded on Wednesday as well next week. So be on the lookout for my next episode of Old School Showcase, and yeah, please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and be on the lookout for more of my reviews right here on the Broken Havoc podcast. But that wraps up everything, and this is Broken Havoc from the Broken Havoc podcast, signing out.